Good morrow everyone, Silvershire here, and welcome back to Palette Swap, where I rank the costumes and character designs of your favorite fighting games. Today's episode will be a little different than usual. I have upcoming videos on Mileena and Scorpion, but before I release those, I figured I should update my rankings for their blue counterparts, because I made the Kitana and Sub-Zero episodes prior to the release of MK1. It also means there's no lore to cover, so let's get straight to the rankings. Kitana's default costume is a step down from MK11. Everything from the neck up is great. I like the metal collar and headband, I like the silver lining on the edge of her mask, and I like her new hairstyle, but the rest of her outfit feels haphazard. There's just stuff all over the place for no apparent reason. The worst offenders are these random asymmetrical metal bits on her arms and legs. I feel like this would make more sense as a Mileena costume, because it seems aggressive and chaotic. Maybe that was intentional to show that their roles have reversed in the rebooted timeline, but their personalities really haven't. I also think Kitana's color palette could be better. She's wearing 2 shades of blue and a bit of purple, but they're such similar tones that they all blend together. 6 out of 10. I'm not going to cover every alternate color for every costume, because there are like a million of them, but I will point out a few that I find noteworthy. Even though I usually prefer a darker blue on Kitana, I think this light blue palette is an improvement, because it reduces the overall amount of colors and makes those colors more distinct from each other. Her Union of Light costume is closer to her MK11 design, which makes sense because this is the outfit worn by Titan Kitana, a version of Kitana from an alternate timeline in which she defeated Kronika at the end of MK11 and became the Master of Time in her own universe before being summoned by Titan Liu Kang from the main timeline. Man, this story went off the rails. I don't know if it was intentional, but her tacet sort of resembles bird wings, which is neat since she turns into a hummingbird for her animality. I would have liked to see that theme incorporated elsewhere. Her color palette is teal and white instead of the usual dark blue and black, which helps communicate the light theme. All in all, this is a solid enough design, but nothing about it really hooks me. 7 out of 10. Her Order of Darkness costume is an evil version of Kitana. We also saw some evil Kitanas in MKX and MK11, but this is a subtler take on the concept. Once again, there's a birdwing motif, and the metal bits around her bodice look vaguely skeletal. I like her slightly messy updo, and I also like how her mask is reminiscent of Mileena. The design does seem a bit imbalanced though, as her legs are very heavily armored while her arms have no armor at all. Her color palette is purple and gold, which is a very royal combination, but it's dark and desaturated, which sells the evil vibe. 8 out of 10. Her Shiva Ranatai costume is a festival outfit. There's very little armor. Instead, it's mostly a fancy dress. It's similar to her default in some ways, especially the cut of her top. I like all the fancy jewelry and patterns on her dress, but I don't love the headpiece. It looks more alien invader than a Denian princess. I also think some sort of ornamental mask would have been cool, although I do appreciate that they included a few maskless skins, because unlike in MK11, you can't customize or remove her mask. Her palette seems a bit understated for an outfit this flashy, but the alternate colors fix that. 7 out of 10. As the name implies, her Mrs. Claus costume is a Christmas-themed skin. She's bundled up for cold weather, and her outfit is decorated with poinsettia and holly, which are very festive. She also has an Arctic fox pelt around her waist, which I'm going to assume is fake because it makes me sad otherwise. Despite being warm and cozy, this still seems like fitting attire for an assassin. She has a mask, a bit of armor, and some battle damage on her pants. I'm especially a fan of Holiday Princess, the blue recolor of this costume, because it's less overtly Christmassy. I like the red and green versions, but I would only want to use them around Christmas time, whereas I would use the blue version whenever because it just looks like what Kitana would wear in the cold. That makes it more versatile than the holiday skins that have Santa hat or whatever. 8 out of 10. Her Earthrealm costume is meant to resemble modern real-world fashion. It's a neat idea for a skin line because it's the sort of thing fan artists do all the time. I like that it mirrors the design of her default. The way her jacket is belted together is kind of odd, but I don't really know about fashion, so maybe that's in right now. The bigger issue is her mask. It looks cool, but it seems like it belongs in an ancient fantasy setting. A simple fabric mask would have suited this design concept better. 6 out of 10. Her Maze Hunter costume is what her alternate dimension self wore as a minion of Titan Havoc. Havoc's whole thing is chaos, so this is meant to look wild and dangerous. I like the idea, but it's better suited to Mileena, who also has a version of this costume. Kitana's is differentiated by being a bit more reserved than her sisters, with a shorter mohawk and a smaller pauldron, which I think is less interesting and flies in the face of the core concept. I do like the scars and pink accents, but there's just too much missed potential here. 5 out of 10. I skipped over Kitana's classic costumes in MK9, MKX, and MK11 because they were the exact same as her MK2 design, but MK1 actually updates her classic look. She has panels on her suit and mask that are a slightly different shade of blue, and the black band around her midsection is pointy now, matching the top of her boots. I appreciate that they didn't overdo the details like her default costume. These are just some much needed modernizations. 9 out of 10. That brings us to Sub-Zero. I already scored his default costume since it appeared in promotional materials. As a reminder, I gave it a 10 out of 10. Sadly, I don't think any of his ults quite lived up to it. His Union of Light costume is simpler and less armored. It's a perfect display of shape language. He mainly uses rectangles instead of triangles like his default, so he seems less dangerous and thus less evil. His palette is also lighter and less saturated than usual. I don't have a lot to say about this one because it's just some robes, but it looks good and suits the Union of Light theme. 7 out of 10. His Order of Darkness costume does the exact opposite, making him spikier and more metallic. His armor reminds me a bit of Siegfried's alternate costume from Soulcalibur IV. It also brings back his ominous white eyes from older games. His color palette is mostly black and dark gray, but there are some subtle blues that keep him looking like Sub-Zero instead of Noob or Smoke. My only complaint is that he could do with some more armor on his legs. His lower half just looks a bit plain compared to his top. 8 out of 10. His Dia de Muertos costume is inspired by the Mexican holiday of the same name. It's a weird choice for Sub-Zero, but it suits him surprisingly well. From the neck down, it's just his Union of Light costume, but with Mexican patterns and a red, white, and black color scheme. But his head is where it gets interesting. His face and mask are both painted like a sugar skull, with intimidating dark circles under his eyes, and of course he's wearing a sombrero. The idea is inherently kind of goofy, but I appreciate how seriously the artists took it. This is a genuinely cool design, and probably his most memorable from MK1. However, it's held back by being a glorified palette swap, and by not being that relevant to Sub-Zero. Also an 8 out of 10. His Deadly Alliance costume is a variation of his alternate costume from that game, and there are some minor downgrades. He's missing his scar and glowing eyes, and his arms don't look icy enough. It's more like he's just freezer burned. The crystals on his shins are kind of a neat addition, but it's weird that they don't show up anywhere else. These changes aren't enough to ruin a good design, but it's knocked down from a 7 to a 6 out of 10. Lastly, he gets his costume from the 1992 movie. I know Mortal Kombat fans are nostalgic for this look, but man is it boring. The classic MK Ninja outfit is already pretty simple, and this is even less detailed. 4 out of 10. And with that, we have ranked every single new Kitana and Sub-Zero costume. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my rankings, and until next time, I bid thee farewell.